How did you feel about Roger Waters' Redux Dark Side of the Moon, which stripped away all the guitar off Dark Side of the Moon?
I've got to be careful what I say here. I don't really understand why he would think that people would want to hear it.
Okay, let's do this. Okay, this new album, Gento. Have I pronounced that right? Gento?
Gento or Gento, I'm not, it's Japanese, so your guess is as good as mine.
Well, this is released on the 22nd of August, and I will, of course, put a purchasing link just below this video. So, as well, first question is when did this project begin and what inspired it?
Uh, well, I met up with Thorsten for a coffee when Marillion played in Berlin in December 2018. And we talked about the possibility of maybe try writing together one day. I flew to Berlin for a couple of days the following February, and we just jammed around some ideas, which is quite promising. Then skip forward to March 2020, and Thorsten had some solo shows in the UK. And after the last show in London, the next day he came up to the Racket Club, the Marillion studio, and we spent the day sort of just jamming, really. But it was obvious from that session that there was something very interesting happened when our two worlds collided, really.
Mhm.
Um, and then the pandemic hit. So again, skip forward to December 21. I started a pattern then of flying to Berlin sometime in December for 5, 6 days at a time, and we just sort of develop ideas together. Um, so although it's been 6 years since we first started working together, it's probably only been 5 weeks in terms of the amount of actual time we spent in the same room.
Yeah. Has is German electronic music always been of interest to you? Do you like? Can you say Krautrock these days? Are you allowed to say Krautrock?
I'm not sure actually.
I don't. I don't
Um,
want Starmer's police knocking on my door. You see.
yeah, you hear a crashing sound. Yeah, no, I listened to Tangerine Dream when I was growing up in Whitby when I was 15, 16 years old. The Ricochet and Stratosphere albums. Yeah, very different to anything else around at the time. I discovered like Pink Floyd and Genesis and Camel and yeah, Tangerine Dream, which is like a different planet. But very interesting. I've always loved that kind of approach. So yeah, I didn't quite know what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised by how easy the creative process was between the two of us. It's no egos, no crosswords. We just enjoyed making music together.
Sure, sure. I remember an interesting story I read when Can were playing in Berlin, and the actor David Niven was in the audience in a nightclub. And apparently, they went over to speak to him and asked him what he thought about their music, and he said, "Well, I rather enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was music." I don't know how you would take that, but Tangerine Dream, this ambient music. I think when I was introduced, I wasn't really sure how to you don't listen to it, you just immerse yourself in it,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah, I mean, I think although the Bioscope project has obviously comparisons with Tangerine Dream, I
mhm.
think we have a lot more changing sort of moods within the tracks. Like something like Vanishing Point, goes through maybe 8 or 9 changes throughout its 20 minutes. Where quite often, I think with Tangerine Dream, they'll have one motif that repeats and repeats and slowly evolves and develops. But it's a similar kind of thing. I mean, it's a sort of cinematic approach, I suppose. Because it's instrumental, you've got to try and make it interesting within those confines. So, I try and come up with melodic moments and hooks and atmospheres. And I think it's worked really well. Um, yeah, I mean, the response we've had so far all around the world has been phenomenal, really, for the people who have heard the album. Obviously, it's not on general release for another couple of weeks yet.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, I mean, you call it Magic Lantern. You mentioned cinematic also. You meant Magic Lantern. Isn't that a cinematic term to do with the moving image or something like that? I mean,
Exactly. Yeah. Gento was a Japanese term for the magic lantern, which was used, I think, in the 18th centuries, maybe even before, to project images. Most of the themes, well, all the themes on the album have that kind of tie-in, man's fascination with the moving image, really. The title track and the name of the project, Bioscope. There's two things. It was inspired by being in Berlin and researching the whole history of early cinema
mhm.
and coming across a thing that was called the bioscope, which was invented by two brothers in the 1800s and one of the first cinema and projection systems. And also, bioscope is a kind of generic term for cinema in a lot of parts of the world. And it's a kind of this mobile viewing platform that's still in use in parts of India and Africa, where you have these, I think, 10 little circular windows that people can look through. And there's even on the image that's on my Facebook page, there's even like an old-fashioned record player on the top of it to give you your soundtrack as you're viewing whatever these images are projected within the cabinet.
I mean, who was it who kind of drove the idea of exploring this concept,
That was my idea. I mean,
and why, out of interest, particularly?
because once you name things, they become firstly more real, and secondly, they tell you what they need to be complete. It was the same all the way back 11 years ago when they did my Ghosts of Pripyat album. You'd name the tracks, and you would have a picture then in your mind what it was, where you needed to take this. And because a lot of the music was very cinematic anyway, it really lended itself to that approach. And one of the tracks, Kaleidoscope, when we were working on it, was just called the Friday Pop Song. But as it evolved, Kaleidoscope was such an obvious name for it.
So the actual image or title, if you have that concept in your mind, that more or less gives birth to the music to a certain extent.
Well, I think it's sometimes it's a case of you have the music, but without a name, without an identity, it's still just a piece of music. It somehow makes it more real once you tie it to a name. And like I say, and it tells you what you need to do to finish that to make it fully resonate with that name, I
Yeah.
think. But yeah, they are all like movies, really, kind of soundtracks for imaginary movies.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that David Gilmour writes in a similar way. When he thinks of music, he thinks of images and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's always been the case with how I approach writing anyway. I mean, it's the same with this other album that I've nearly finished with Steve Hackett. Again, a lot of that is very cinematic, but in a completely different way. It's a lot more guitar based. But yeah, soundtracks to some of my sort of favorite music, really, from the Vangelis Blade Runner soundtrack to the Wim Wenders movie Paris, Texas, with the slide guitar work of Ry Cooder.
Hmm.
Um, very visual thing. Oh, the soundtrack to that French film Betty Blue.
Okay.
Again, incredibly powerful and evocative. So that kind of like informs a lot of my sort of choices and direction when it comes to trying to do that sort of approach.
When bands perform music that is designed for a soundtrack, um, which is the predominant art here, the actual are they making music for the picture, or does the picture provide, which one's secondary, do you think?
In our case, the picture is secondary because we've actually had movies made for all the tracks on the album. Two of which have been released so far. They on YouTube. The Kaleidoscope and Gento, which is all the Japanese Tokyo time lapse um, imagery that my daughter put together. Um, but yeah, it's really whatever fits really when you try to think of those sort of visual images. But what was interesting is we had a Dolby Atmos playback a couple of weeks ago in London, and seeing these finished videos. and hearing the music in that Dolby Atmos complete surround sound thing, it just tied together so well. It was such a powerful thing. It kind of made me want to do a tour of cinemas, quite honestly, and to forget to play live. Just show your film in the cinemas with an amazing sound system, and people experience it in that way.
A lot of artists are doing that. Roger Waters just released his new concert film in cinemas and things like that. So
Oh, right. Okay.
Pink Floyd reissued Pompeii, didn't they, in cinemas? I think
Yes. Yeah. A
because
friend of mine worked on that.
most people don't have 5.1 sound systems, and this is an interesting way to experience this music.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, um, I don't. I've always been a little bit skeptical about Dolby Atmos just because not many people are ever going to be able to afford to have a proper system in their house unless they're either very rich, have their own cinema room, or have a very, very understanding wife that doesn't mind them drilling holes in the ceiling
Yeah.
for for those speakers. But I mean, hearing this album performed through such a system, well, played through such a system, it is quite eye-opening. And I think you can get a fraction of that with a whole immersive audio on a lot of Apple devices.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, no, it made me think about the possibility of upgrading my own studio to an Atmos
Mm.
one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the reason I mentioned the soundtracks serving the film rather than the other way round is as I had this discussion about Obscured by Clouds with somebody. I said, for me, I think some of the music on this album purely is to serve the film, and the film itself is not that good. You know,
Yeah, I've never seen the film. I had one of the first Floyd albums I owned actually, but
well, the film
I've
is pretty dreadful, really.
yeah, I've never seen it. So yeah, but I can imagine, it's one of those things. No, but and I think that's what's a great thing. If we ever get to do soundtracks, uh, I'd much rather it was a great film that was not necessarily high budget or from a major studio or director, just something that's a classic film, really, with great acting and a great story
Yeah,
that you feel like you might be able to add something to.
yeah, yeah. What is the vanishing point? It starts with this beautiful ambient sort of sound, some lovely ethereal guitar. But what is the vanishing point exactly?
Well, it's two things. Firstly, it's a term in photography where two parallel lines converge in the distance. That's called the vanishing point.
Mhm.
And in this case, it's also a classic American film of the 70s. It's about an ex-racing driver delivering a muscle car across to the other side of America while high on speed, I think, and being
Mhm.
chased by the police and all these other factions. So it's a bit of a classic, for especially anyone who's a petrol head. But I thought it kind of it fitted the mood of what we were trying to do with the music, I think.
Well, it's certainly an enigmatic title as well. Um, I was going to ask you, talked about in cinemas, but do you think there are plans to perhaps tour, showcase this album?
Yes, yeah, we have five shows shoehorned in after we got the final Marillion weekend in Utrecht in December, the beginning of December. Straight after which, I've got the first two Bioscope shows in the Netherlands, then two in Germany, including one in Berlin, and then the final show in Warsaw in Poland.
Wow, excellent.
And
I mean, you
hopefully
meant
next year I can do some more in the UK.
hopefully, yes, that'd be great. You mentioned the M word, Marillion. I've got to. My subscribers would not forgive me if I didn't lean on you and see if I could extract any snippets of information about titles, themes, concepts you might be working on a new album.
Yeah, no, we're working on a new album. We have been for several years now. In terms of no, I can't really. There's nothing concrete yet. Our situation is, I mean, the first half of this year was taken up with the Marillion weekends, the eight weekends around the world, and 3 months rehearsing for them. We only start back in the studio together next week, and from that point, we'll be trying to take some of the 5,000 ideas that we have. Um, and make them into songs. Hopefully, I would think for a release some point in the middle of next year.
Do you find the writing process has changed for you all as you've gotten older or
Not
become
really.
easier,
I mean,
perhaps?
our writing process kind of changed about 20 years ago, well, maybe 18 years ago, when we stopped working with Dave Megan. We took this approach of let's all get together in the room and improvise and record everything, and then sift through these ideas for the building blocks of the songs.
Mhm.
Um, but it depends. It still depends on someone having a great idea, whether or not they have it outside the room or in the room.
Sure, sure. Um, we got a deluxe edition of This Strange Engine, which I think was just the end of last year, I believe it came out. That's the Castle Communication catalogue you seem to be going through. Do you know if there are any plans or thoughts towards the next deluxe edition of a Marillion release?
Probably, but I honestly can't remember what it is. Basically, we will get round to doing all of the albums, probably up until the last three.
Right. Okay. I mean, talking of Marillion albums, Less is More, that was the acoustic album.
Yeah.
Has there ever been any thoughts to perhaps revisiting that concept, but with some of Marillion's newer material?
We haven't talked about it, but you never know. It was fun to do. It was fun to tour. But really, it's our focus is just on the next studio album. And yeah, trying to finish it and try and make it as good as possible because the last album had such amazing reviews from the fans and from the media that we've got to try and make this one equally as good.
Right, right. Um, I was interested to see. I was watching the new Steve Hackett Blu-ray live at the Albert Hall. And as a huge Genesis fan, does it what does it mean to you to be actually on that stage with Steve Hackett playing Genesis?
It was a lot of fun. Obviously, I'd done it once before when I did the Lamia with him at Hammersmith, I think it was. But yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it. It's a little bit unconventional because we were sort of jamming for quite a long time around something that doesn't have a lot of chordal movement in it. So it's quite a challenge to pull rabbits out of the hat time after time to play something interesting. But I think it was fun, and people seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, you played the Albert Hall obviously as Marillion. And as a silly question for you, John Lennon asked in 1967, nobody really knows how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall. I
Mhm.
wonder if you're closer to answering that question.
It really depends on the size of the hole, doesn't it?
Yeah, brilliant, silly answer for a silly question, I think. Um, I mean, you obviously playing with Steve Hackett. I mean, if would you jump at the chance to sort of do the same thing with say, David Gilmour gave you the call? Because I know you're a big Pink Floyd fan.
Yeah, I'd love to. I don't think that's likely. I mean, Steve and I are very good friends where I've never really spoken to Dave, even though I've been in the same room as him several times. Um, I think I'd love to, but I think it's pretty unlikely to happen, put it that way.
And whose style overall do you prefer from between Steve Hackett, Gilmour, and Andy Latimer?
I think they all have something quite unique. I love the bluesiness of Dave Gilmour and some of those iconic phrases and where he's used effects. I think Steve is just so radically different as a guitar player. Again, his use of pedals and sounds and tapping, and the way that his and Tony Banks's roles kind of seem to interchange from section to section, and just a sheer emotional quality to his playing. Um, so I can't really pick any of the three of them, really. I mean, again, Andy Latimer has that emotional quality. And in some ways, I think some of my phrasing has more to do with Andy's style than the other two. Um, but I took something of what I do from each of them.
Yeah. Do you know Andy Latimer auditioned to be Roger Waters' guitar player?
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
I interviewed Roger Waters' guitar player. I can't remember his name now, but he said when they were auditioning, Andy Latimer put his name forward and he auditioned, but it just wasn't quite right, apparently. I think yeah, it involved singing as well, which it just wasn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's probably the same as this situation that's just happened with John Payne's Asia and Francis Dunnery. You have amazing musicians, but they're great at being themselves. They're not, you have some other musicians who can play in any style totally convincingly. Be a clone of any player you want, but they don't necessarily have an original voice when it comes to their instrument. Some do, some can do everything, but not many of them. where I think somebody like Andy or Francis, have their true originals. You can't expect them to be, Matthew, tonight I'm going to be, that's not fair on them as artists.
No. Well, I mean, talking about guitar playing, iconic guitar playing, how did you feel about Roger Waters' Redux Dark Side of the Moon, which stripped away all the guitar off Dark Side of the Moon?
I thought it was very strange.
Well, I
Um,
mean, I from does it have artistic merit, or is it just an excuse for him to bare his buttocks to his former bandmates?
I've got to be careful what I say here. I don't really understand why he would think that people would want to hear it. I think it, for me, just comes across as a grand conceit to think that just those words or even approximations of the melody maybe stands up really on its own 2 feet.
Well, I interviewed Alan Parsons, and I asked him what he thought about it, and I think the word he used was unnecessary. Really,
Yeah, yeah, I'll go along with that.
I've only got one more question for you, really. It's a
Okay.
silly question. Um, uh, I'm in that kind of mood today. Steve Hogarth, he said when before season's end, he was thinking of packing up music and becoming a milkman. Knowing Steve Hogarth the way you know Steve Hogarth, what sort of milkman would he have been?
Oh, I think on the whole, he would be quite a chirpy milkman, probably singing as he went.
Anyway, Gento, the album, it's out on the 22nd of August. There are purchasing links just below this video. I urge you to check it out. I was listening to it this morning. It's absolutely fabulous. I can't wait to get an actual physical copy of it. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me.
You're very welcome. Also, I should mention that the Bioscope website launches tomorrow, which is bioscope.music for anyone
Yes,
interested.
and hopefully look out for some UK dates.
Yes, yeah, hopefully Aprilish next year. That's my plan.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much. We're probably finishing a bit early. You probably got time to get yourself a cup of tea or something.
Yeah, brilliant.
Anyway, all the best, mate. Bye bye.
All right, cheers. Thanks a lot.
Okay,
Take
bye.
care.